Hi, I'm Jonathan Evison, and you're listening to Time to Connect.
Hey, Johnny Evison, thanks so much for taking the time to connect. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation. I've been reading your several of your novels and really enjoying them. And you're kind of hot right now. I know you've been pretty busy. Have you been on a book tour, or what have you been doing lately?
I don't really feel very hot. I just feel worn out. Banned Book Week happened a couple weeks ago there, so that I'm booked solid for that every year. And then just some fall trade shows. So, I was flying around to go to the fall bookseller trade shows, which is a great opportunity, but getting in front of booksellers, presenting
Yeah,
the forthcoming book, eating a lot of.
yeah. Men, we're all so busy these days. It's crazy how busy we all are. We live in a culture of busyness. But I wonder, in your case, do you have a kind of a sense that you almost got to take advantage of the opportunities now while things are going good for you?
I hit the ground running in like 2007. I have never stopped. No, it's never slowed down. I'm no more busy now than I was in 2008. I mean, I used to be doing 30, 40, 50 cities a book, paperback and hardback. And, the book industry is dialed back on that. A lot of that because of once we had the pandemic, they're like, oh, well, I don't know how we're going to monetize Zoom, but it sure makes things easier. We don't have to pay for a $300 hotel, two flights, $100 per diem. And so, yeah, no, I really haven't stopped. And in that, whatever, 15, 17 years or whatever, I've also had three kids. So, luckily, writing books is my only job, but, you add the speaking engagements, the touring, the career management stuff, and like it kind of becomes two jobs. Every now and then I'll teach workshops or something. Thank God I don't have to teach all the time, but there's always, so it's really like having three jobs. But yeah, no, I'm as busy. I haven't stopped in 17 years, unfortunately.
Are you just wired that way? You think you're just a guy who's going to be busy no matter what?
Well, I mean, in a way, yeah, I'm wired that way. I'm manic, right? I got a lot of energy, but that's not my preferred
Yeah,
modus operandi. I'd rather just, sit in my ivory tower, which is my garage, and write books and drink beer. That's definitely my preferred. I'm not somebody who gets energy out of doing the performative stuff. I mean, I can do it. I'm somewhat adept at it. I can do public speaking and things, but it's not something that gives me energy. I'm not the performative element of it. The performative element for me is on the page,
uh-huh.
where I can be my best self and I can edit myself and I can
Right.
filter myself and, you know, distill the best of me, which, isn't easy.
So is that when you would say you're at your happiest when you're in
Oh,
your
clearly
garage
that, or
drinking
when I'm
beer?
with my kids, when I'm connecting with my kids, that would be one, and
Yeah,
two would be, yeah, when I'm working. I mean, my writing is it's my therapy, it's my yoga, it's my, that and playing shuffleboard or darts or something, drinking beer with my friends and listening to music. Anytime I'm just really focused on one thing, because I'm always spinning. So
yeah,
anytime I can get my focus on one thing, and nothing does that quite like writing books,
right.
kind of just getting out of my own way.
Do you still play music at all?
No,
You
no.
just play the turntable or the
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
whatever
never
device it
really
is?
did. I mean, I played a tiny bit of bass guitar, but I was a vocalist. So,
Okay.
I mean, I was a screamer in a punk rock band many, many years ago. So I never really identified as a musician. My brother was a lounge entertainer. I grew up around musicians. I'm conversant in music. I mean, particularly listening, but I mean, I know enough, I can talk about music in musical terms just because I grew up with so many musicians. But no, I never did consider myself a musician.
Well, our mutual friend Willie Blaughton tells me that you have an amazing record collection,
I
by the way.
do that. Yeah, and he contributes to it every time he comes up to visit too. He always brings
Nice,
me a stack of records. So
nice.
that's kind of but you come to visit my house, I feed you, I'll get you drunk, I'll entertain you, but you usually bring some records and they're not leaving with you. That's my pet peeve is when,
I love
you have your DJ friends and they want to bring records to your house and play their records. And I'm like, hey, that's fine, but get ready to leave them.
nice. Instead of a bottle of wine, you bring a record or two. Uh, well, you're in the Seattle area, is that right?
I'm on Bainbridge Island, which is a 40-minute ferry ride from Seattle. And then half the time, usually when I'm working, I'm out near Port Angeles in the Olympic Mountains, which is
Hmm.
about an hour and a half from here.
And I know you're a Seahawks fan. My sympathies. They start off 3-0, and now they're 3-3. It's
Well,
tough
new
stuff there.
coach, I can't say that I'm terribly surprised. I mean, it's a new coach, new system, two new coordinators, a lot of personnel turnover. I mean, I'll admit I got a little excited at first. I thought, man, the scheming's going to make all the difference.
Yeah.
And so far I think McDonald's a great schemer, but I think what he needs to get a hang of is what Pete Carroll mastered. Pete Carroll was a great culture builder. He could get buy-in from his players. He was not a genius football mind. You know what I mean? He was very vanilla, always playing cover two, drop a couple of deep safeties. They played very simple schemes. McDonald has got more of a Kyle Shanahan sort of scheming mind, but I don't know. It sounds like he doesn't have the buy-in from the players. Like Pete could always get that.
Mhm.
Even if it got a little stale, the messaging got a little stale, he could usually get that buy-in. So we'll see.
Yeah, right on. And we have so much to talk about, and I don't want to take too much of your time. Obviously, we want to talk about your novels, and I want to hear about the forthcoming novel, The Heart of Winter, which I believe is going to be released in January. You'll be busy again, I'm sure, touring that book. I have to hear the Stone Gossard story. I know you've probably told that many times that you kicked him out of your band, but I want to hear that again if you don't mind.
Oh,
Uh,
well, I mean, it was just pretty simple. Stoney was he was a little too his vision was a little more musically advanced than ours, I would say. I mean, we were
oh,
pretty much four
okay.
chord straight ahead, sort of OC punk rock band, and Stoney was coming up, oh, well, there's going to be two guitar parts, and it was a little
Uh,
more arena rockish, and then I was just like, dude, that's just kind of not what we're
uh,
doing here.
are
Love him.
you still in contact with him?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of being in contact, I noticed, you never know with Facebook friends, whether they're really really friends or not. But I noticed some mutual friends that we have. Peter Blackstock is one. Are
Oh
you?
yeah, Peter's a good friend. Now I used to always visit him every time Austin was a tour stop, but now he's in San Diego. So
Yep.
yeah, every time I go to San Diego, I'll see him again in January. He's been up to the cabin as well. I've known
Nice.
Peter since I guess the early '90s when he was doing music coverage for I think it was the Seattle PI.
Yeah, I met Peter in the late '80s. He sang at two of my weddings, uh, which is kind of an odd distinction. But yeah, good guy. Been good friends with him for a long time. And Chuck Taylor, Chuck Taylor, the poet. He
That's somebody
really
I don't know personally. I
okay.
love his tennis shoes though. Been wearing his tennis shoes since I was 6 years old.
And then Rick Bass, of course, love Rick Bass, and I've been
Love Rick Bass as well. I don't know Rick personally. No, that's a Facebook
gotcha
connection
trying to
there.
get him on, and Pete Droge.
Pete, I grew up with. Yeah, Pete was actually the
Nice.
original guitar player before Ben Shepherd,
No kidding.
before Stone Gossard of Marching Crimes. He was. It was just me and Pete, and I would sing into headphones, and we had like two songs. One was called "No Other Way." But yeah, I'm still in contact with Pete. He lives over on Whidbey Island.
Well,
We don't
next
see.
time, if you think about it, next time you talk to him, give him a little encouragement. I've been trying to get him on the podcast, and I think he wants to, but we haven't been able to get it together.
Yeah, you're just kind of mining me for all my contacts.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry. But listen, man, let's get to your novels. But maybe before we do that, a little bit of biography. I'll put links in the show notes, and I think it's pretty easy for people to find out what you're all about. But maybe I'll just put you on the spot and say, how do you kind of give a potted biography of who you are and where you came from and how you got to where you are today?
Uh, Grew up working class poor to a single mom. Grew up in libraries, kind of became an autodidact at a young age. Third grade teacher sort of saved my life. I was kind of at-risk youth, kind of probably should have been medicated, climbing the walls. And she noticed that I like to write. And as a form of escapism at that point, I had lost my primary caregiver when my sister died in a freak car accident. And so I took to writing as a sort of form of an escape, and same with reading. And she nourished that interest and got me involved in something called the Young Authors Conference in like third or fourth grade. And they published my children's book, A King Without the Crown, at Seattle Pacific University. And so was an auspicious beginning to my publishing career. However, it was like 30 years before I published anything else. So between 1978 and 2008, there was a little, there's I guess that would, yeah, so yeah, 20, that's 40 years, huh? Or no, 30 years.
78 to 98, you said? Or
Yeah,
2008?
78 to 2008.
Yeah, that's 30 years.
Yeah, so it's the 30 years. For 30 years, I didn't publish. And then, I wrote 5, 6 novels well, 6 novels and a memoir and a story collection. So like 8 books, I think, that weren't published in my from the time I was about 19 to the time I was in my mid 30s. Partially because I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, the first 3 books weren't very good, but eventually I started writing some pretty good books, but I didn't know what to do with them. I was just, sending them as, blindly to the bottom of office buildings in New York. So nothing ever became of that. And then finally in my late 30s, I got serious and realized, well, geez, somebody's not going to just swoop down and discover me. I have to kind of find my champion. So I started to do what you're supposed to do, like
Mhm.
query agents and editors and so forth. And finally I broke through.
Yeah, nice. And it wouldn't surprise most people to hear that songwriters write a lot of songs that they end up not recording or performing. I mean, that's certainly the case with me and every other songwriter I know. But someone who writes novels, I think it would be surprising to hear that you have completed novels that you've not published. But I'm learning that that's not that uncommon. I mean, it's one thing to say those old novels when I was first getting started, learning how this craft. And one question I'd have there, do you ever think about bringing some of those back and
Never.
reworking them? But then also I was talking recently to Michael Parker, and he was telling me he has, since he's been publishing, he'll occasionally write a complete novel and just say, no, this isn't good enough to even send to a publisher, which was shocking to me because a novel is quite an undertaking.
Yeah, I just wrote a boxing novel like maybe 3 years ago that wasn't good enough. I didn't even bother.
Really?
Yeah, and I love boxing, and I loved writing. There's some great writing about boxing in it, but just overall, the center didn't hold. Tonally, it wasn't playing to my strengths. It just, yeah, no, it was fun exercise, but no, I didn't really. Yeah, I didn't even try. And yeah, and I have another. Yeah, there's 3 or 4 of those novels since I've been publishing that I haven't. Yeah,
Wow.
I'm hitting better than 50%, but there's still, I'm still finding new ways to fail all the time.
Do you, when, for example, when you completed The Heart of Winter and you said, okay, it's done, I assume you've probably got at least one more project going now. Do you think in terms of, you probably already have ideas of what you want to write about next, but do you ever think about bringing some of those, either the boxing novel or some of those early novels that you started and said, I've got something to work with now instead of starting from scratch? No,
Never, never.
really?
I had this novel called The Dream Life of Huntington Sales, which was a total mess, just like it sounds. It had some great world building, some great characters, but it had all these divergent themes in it, country music, commercial logging, UFOs. I just like, but the center never held. And I tried like 4 different ways to save that novel. Now I'm going to add kind of a noir thing to it. And like, it just became a sausage making operation. And I finally just pulled the plug on it. And I'll never do that again. I mean, sometimes on a lazy writing day, you'll try to cheat and pick a paragraph from something you haven't published just as a
Sure.
placeholder. Like, gosh, I did all this research on commercial logging for this book, and I need to say something about logging. So I'm going to cut and paste. It lasts about a day and then it goes away. Every narrative landscape has to be completely and unique for me. I mean, it has to be
Wow.
completely organically created. I can't even steal a sentence out of something. I mean, it just doesn't ring true to me. It has to all come from the one place. So no, and no, most of the early novels are, they're not very good anyway. So
Okay.
it's really easy to resist that temptation.
Sure.
And
Okay.
if there's a couple that were they published, I'd want to be dead first. You know what I mean? Like this is what the guy was doing when he was 23, 24. I'd want to, that'd be like
Yeah.
that'd be like my asterisks, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't want to present those in my, where I'm at now is something I just came out with because I don't know. In some ways, they'd probably feel like a step backwards or
Yeah.
out of step anyway.
I wonder about those posthumous novels. Like Larry Brown has one, something about catfish. I can't remember the title, but he was working on it when he died, and somebody finished it and published it, which always feels a little strange to me that someone
Yeah,
would do
Beau
that.
L'Amour did that with a lot of his father. Louis L'Amour is like, because Louis L'Amour wrote like 300
Yeah,
westerns or something.
sure.
But when I'd met Beau once, and he's sort of managed his father's estate or whatever, and I don't know if he was writing them himself or he was trying to find writers to finish them. But yeah, I know I've thought of that. I know which friend I'd have finish my novel if I
Okay.
if I couldn't finish. I've already told him, like, look, dude, if I die 3 chapters from the end of this, I need you to finish this.
Nice, nice. So, how many ideas do you have going at once typically? Are you pretty focused on this is going to be my next novel that I'm going to work on when you finish one, or do you have several ideas that are vying for your attention all the time?
Usually several, but the dance between art and commerce is such an awkward one that very early on my career I decided I'm always going to be at least one novel, hopefully two novels ahead of my publisher, so that I never have to cross the bridge of, well, this works, so let's try this again. Or I always want to reserve the right to write exactly what I want to write. I just stay ahead. So like I'm about 3 weeks from finishing a novel, and I already have another. So I have two novels right now. And in a
Wow.
month I'll have two novels. And so
In
and even
addition to The Heart of Winter?
yeah,
Wow. Okay.
that's how I protect what I do. You know what I mean? Because
Nice.
if you start to get a little traction, any kind of success, somebody's gonna try to
Yeah.
and nobody knows what they're doing.
Nobody knows what they're doing. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know, publishing. I
Okay.
mean, and they know what they like, but I don't know. I mean, they're always trying to capture lightning in a bottle. They always have to think commercially first.
Sure.
Um, and that's an inexact way to think. And personally, I think that the artist is the purveyor of culture. So I mean, I think the artist has a better idea than the marketing people. Truly, like what's in the zeitgeist, or what's
Yeah.
what the pulse of a nation or a world is. So the only thing I have to watch out being years ahead is like writing about technology or writing just to the moment. So like, even though I have two novels right now, I'm going to probably publish them out of order, because one of them is like a evergreen set in 1850. It's all historical, so I can publish it
Yeah.
whenever I want. And one of them speaks a little more to the moment, so I'll publish it next. Usually I don't write evergreens. Usually when I have a historical, like West of Here, A Small World, usually when I have a historical narrative, there's usually a kind of modern counterpoint.
Sure.
Um, this one doesn't. It's called The High Golden Grass. It's a Western. And so that one can publish in 4 years or 40 years. It doesn't matter. But,
Yeah. Yeah. Odd question, perhaps, but what is it about you, do you think, that makes you a successful writer? I mean, because it can't just be sheer determination and time, because other people could put in just as much time as you and not be as successful. What is it about you, do you think, that makes you successful as a writer?
well, I think it's that I need to write. You know what I mean? I started writing out of a need to escape. So like it fulfills a larger need than being published. That's just the cherry on top. So I mean, once I got in the room, once this became the best money making opportunity I was going to ever have, which is pretty sad in itself. But when you're a caregiver and a landscaper and you're sorting rotten tomatoes for the United Grocers, or checking people's gas meters, or just, whatever, name any sort of unskilled labor, I've done it. Although caregiving and landscaping do take some skill, they just don't pay very well. um I was doing this for a long time before any of that. Once I was published, I was like, okay, I've got to, help myself here. So I became proactive in my social networking and my touring, and everything stuff I learned being in bands. I mean, when doing it yourself, just being a DIY. If you're in a punk band and you live in Seattle and you're going to play in Portland in 2 weeks, well, best thing to do is drive down there and 2 weeks early and start flying the hell out of telephone poles, that kind of thing. So yeah, but I think that, I mean, I'm just never going to stop doing it. And I mean, and it's not because of publishing. I mean, I'm really not even that daunted when I get very rarely do I get actually depressed. Uh, and when I do, it's for like 5 minutes. Like if I have to throw a novel away, um, I'm depressed for like 10 minutes and it's just on to the next thing because it's the work. The work is the gift. I mean, that's the thing. The work is always the gift. Is it frustrating trying to manage a career, trying to follow the trends of publishing? I never try to write to a market ever. Like, that's just madness. I'm never going to, like, this has a lot of commercial appeal. Sometimes a book has broader appeal than others, and I think like The Heart of Winter has a very broad appeal because I think it's about a long-term relationship, a 70-year marriage. And I think anybody who's been in a long relationship will understand that. So it makes it sort of broad, but then sometimes the books aren't as broad, it's just whatever I want to write, but nothing's going to stop me from writing it. And I'm going to continue to hustle to try to sell my books and help myself. When I work with my publisher, I'm like, make me some postcards so I can send them to booksellers, or here, I really want to go to the trade shows, or, I need more galleys. I mean, I understand what I need to be successful, and I try to advocate for myself to get those things, because that's not always in lockstep with a more corporate publisher or whatever. So yeah, I have to not fail. I just, there's no alternative.
So, on those rare moments, occasions when you do get depressed for 10 minutes, what gets you out of it is diving into the work.
Yeah, just getting excited about the next thing.
Yeah.
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 I you fail. I mean, I grew up as an athlete when I was younger, and sometimes you lose. So whatever. I mean, you're not playing just I was just never that guy that just played to win.
Mm.
I'm competitive, but like, what I mean by competitive is I like to compete. I like that the stakes are high and I like that I'm engaged. At the end of the day, I don't have to win. I've had friends like that, and it's like you get to 19 to 19 in ping pong with them. It's like, dude, you got to stop and go, do I really want to win this game? This
Yeah.
guy's a good chance this guy's going to throw the ping pong paddle and it's going to break. He's going to be in a miserable mood the rest of the day. It was a pretty good game. So, I'd
Yeah.
rather lose 21-19 than win 21-3 kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm always I love being in the game. I love,
What kind of athlete were you? Would you play?
baseball was probably my best sport. I played basketball. My mom had never let me play tackle football, but we played a lot of flag football out in the yard and stuff like that. Yeah, mostly baseball and basketball.
Okay. Screenplays. I'm curious. I know the fundamentals of Caring was made into a film, I believe. Any of your other novels? I didn't see that any of them were. Have you gotten any attention on that? Anyone coming to you? Several of them that I've read, I think could make terrific films. But where are
Well,
you on
most of them have been optioned at some point, but that,
that?
the
Okay.
odds, just because it's optioned doesn't mean. I think Harriet's been optioned 6 times and it's still at Focus. It's been through 3 producers. Last I heard, Laura Dern was involved, but I have no idea. The fact that they keep optioning it through producers probably bodes well. It means they believe in the project, but I have no idea. I have no control over it. I don't write the scripts. You know, it's just gravy to me. Like, I've written a couple feature scripts myself. Nothing ever happened to them.
Okay. If you could choose one of your published novels to be made into a feature film right now, which one would you choose?
Probably The Heart of Winter, because it's next and I want the money
Yeah.
now. I would
Yes.
love to see Small World be like a limited
Yeah.
series or something like that, but that I
I
don't
can
even
see
think it'd
that.
be a limited series, because that would give it like 12 episodes or something. I mean, it would need to be several seasons long. I would love to see that. I think it would be one of the more ambitious things ever attempted for television, to have that huge bifurcated timeline and all those stories. But
Yeah.
I think in the right hands, it would be amazing. But whatever. That's not what I do. I don't even really watch that much streaming entertainment.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah. I don't
lucky
think you
enough
have
to.
time.
Yeah, I know. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I just now I'm trying to use my time to read, or just be with my kids.
Who do you read these days?
Well, I just finished Claire Keegan's wonderful short novel. I think it's Beautiful Things Like These or something. I'm going to get the title wrong, about the girls. It's a Christmas novel that takes place in Ireland in the mid 80s. And it's about this like home for unwed mothers where they're basically enslaved. It was very powerful. I'm reading Karen Russell's Antidote, which doesn't come out till March, but I've run into Karen a couple times the last couple weeks, and we've become friends. And so I'm flying through her novel Antidote, which is amazing. It's a Dust Bowl narrative with a big magical realist element in it. Finally getting around to reading Richard Powers' Overstory, which is my kind of book, but it's big, and I have 3 kids. And I have a big blurb pile too, but I'm finally just like, I'm taking back my reading life because I've said yes to so many blurbs. A lot of people say no, and most people, but I've always tried to help other writers, and that gets me in trouble. Like I'll have like 10 books on my blurb pile all the time, and what happens is they're all good books, but it takes away my freedom to read what I want to read. And so I've been trying to take that back lately. Just because you're in a different frame of mind when you're like, okay, I got to read this because I owe somebody a
Yeah.
blurb and there's a deadline versus, oh, I've been wanting to read the Overstory for whatever, 4 years since it came out. So just recently I'm trying to take my reading life back more because I used to just read so voraciously in my 20s and 30s before children, like 3, 4 books a week. Um, and once you have 3 kids, it's,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it gets harder. But I've been taking my reading like back. So yeah, usually I'm like that. My answer to that question is a little sadder. Like, gosh, I haven't had time to read. But now I'm back into it, full throttle.
Cool. I would think if you're reading something, knowing that you're reading it for the purpose of writing a blurb, you're going to read it differently than you would.
Yeah,
You're
well, you tend to get a little more distracted. There's a deadline. I mean, even if the book's great, it sometimes feels like a chore.
yeah,
Just because, you've committed to doing something. When I committed to reading a book that I want to read, it's just because I committed to wanting to read it.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not very good at saying no. I mean, I want to help a brother out, as it were. You know what I mean? I know blurbs mean a lot. It's a horrible ask. I wish the industry would just get rid of it. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't have to ask people wouldn't have to ask me, and we could just use trade reviews or whatever. But like, it's just sort of a necessary evil.
Tell us a little bit about The Heart of Winter. You mentioned that it's about a long-term relationship. Can can you say a few more things about it?
I just wanted to write my mom the love story she deserved, because she was sort of unlucky in love, and unwise, suppose too. And when she went through her stage 4 cancer, I was there beside her through all of it. Like, she lives with us, so I was there through the radiation, through all the doctor's appointments, through aftercare, reading to her every day in the aftercare, sleeping with her at night so I could help her to the bathroom and stuff like that. And going through that process, I was like, God, man, she really deserves a partner to be there instead of me. And so I just decided to write her the love story she deserved.
Hmm, man, that's powerful. I'm not even sure what to say about that. That's
Well, this is the first time I've talked about it without crying. I've been doing the trade shows, and every time I get up there in front of a live audience, I start crying. So I was determined not to do that. I have to learn how to not do that, because it's just humiliating. I mean, people kind of like the authenticity of it or the rawness, but like, as the guy that's up there crying in front of hundreds of people, you're like, oh God, dude. Yeah, it's just. So yeah, I think it's a novel about what it takes. It's not a boy meets girl, up kind of love story. I mean, it's a love story about endurance. It's, like Percy Sledge said, true love travels down a gravel road. It's a 70-year marriage that pretty much overcomes every obstacle any long-term relationship could. And sort of on another level, it's sort of about the culture wars a bit because they're two diametrically opposed people. I mean, at least ideologically, Ruth's like a small town girl who grows up with bohemian aspirations, and Abe is a sort of hard bench Protestant Midwesterner who wears bow ties and is conservative. And they have a series of terrible early dates in 1953 at the University of Washington, but they end up together. And, through all those years, they never, they're always sort of ideologically opposed on certain things, but their relationship is built on those common things that they have in common. And, I don't know. That's a message I am gravitating more and more to, because I'm tired of the culture wars. I mean, the pitch of public discourse in this country now has become ad hominem to the point that it's like, you know, it's like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, with people on each extreme saying stuff they don't even mean just to get a
Right.
reaction. And you know, when I think about it, the people I know, most of the people I know, whatever Republican, Democrat, they, you know, most of them are a little more centrist towards the middle. You know what I mean? And I feel like we need to start concentrating on the things we have in common. I mean, the media gets off, you know, the media thrives on showing us the extremes to sort of, you know, divisiveness is, you know, profitable. But I think
Right.
the reality is most of the people we know in a daily life can find more common ground. And that's kind of what this book, I mean, like if Abe and Ruth can do it for 70 years, you know, I think we as a nation can do it. I know a lot of that's going to be unpopular to my like far left friends and also to my far right friends because, you know, but whatever, we'll just go on without you. We're going to decide to get along and, you know, truly make this country great again or whatever, you know.
Speaking of far left friends, have you gotten much pushback about um, adopting characters of color? Your main character in Lawn Boy is gay, and have you got any pushback as to who are you to write to inhabit these characters?
Only from white ladies, pretty much, in publishing. I've never, look, I mean, as a writer, first of all, I'm doing this as an exercise in empathy. So the whole reason I'm doing this is to become a more expansive person. They say, write what you know. I say, use what you know. Write what you don't know. I write to discover. I write as an exercise in empathy. So um, writing outside the purview of my personal experience is why I do this. And I know as a reader, we all know as readers that you cannot afford to hit a writer hits one false note, they risk losing you, you know? Um, like I once had a horse cantering instead of trotting, and Jesus, I had to hear from every old horse lady in America about that. So if I can't, you know, if I can't get the horse's pace right, you know, the horse's gait right, I'm certainly not going to fuck up on, you know, trying to get the gay experience right or writing a black character or writing a native character. I mean, I've used, I don't really have a name for them. I call them readers. They call them sensitivity readers in publishing now, but I've been using them for decades. But I think of them more as authenticity readers, meaning if I'm going to write outside the purview of my lived experience, well, I damn well better have it vetted. Like I'm not a combat veteran, so I had a combat veterans read who you know, Legends of the North Cascades, and I said, I need you to vet the hell out of this. I can't have a single false note in here. If there's anything I need to know about it, I need you to be brutal. And they're like, this sounds like a fucking Navy Federal commercial. What the fuck's a chew? And they do that, and I've done
Good.
that forever because, and I've never experienced any blowback. I mean, like the Sklallam elders reached out to me after, you know, some of the Sklallam elders anyway reached out to me shortly after I had written West of Here to tell me that they liked the book. And I mean, you know, I've had plenty of gay characters tell me they like Mike. I did have I was doing a student Zoom once with like a high school, and I think one of the girls was like, well, Mike's gay experience doesn't seem true to me. He just, you know, he would have known earlier. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. You would say that because my editor for Lawn Boy was Chuck Adams, who was gay, but didn't figure out till he was gay until the exact age as Mike. So even that I know is authentic. You know what I mean? Chuck had this experience for throughout adolescence. He was just like, maybe if I find the right woman, maybe if I find the right woman, like, you know, Mike and Remy, like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And then he had an experience with another guy and he was just like a light bulb went off.
Yeah.
So even if that doesn't seem true to somebody, I know that it's true. That came from Chuck's experience. So like, I don't write anything I don't think that's not authentic. I'm not just making it up. I'm not just sitting there going, I think this is what it would be like to be, you know, an 80-year-old woman. I mean, you know, I have my mom, I have, you know, I have plenty of people to, I'm blessed with a very dynamic group of friends, and they're great resources. I mean, I think writing a novel is a collaboration in a sense. I lean on so many people. Like Abe sells insurance for 40 years. I don't know any. I had to learn all about insurance, and I don't do it by reading textbooks because you'll miss it. You need to talk to somebody who can walk me through every scene. And so I use my friend Todd Hall, who I went to high school with, who owned Bainbridge Insurance, and he knew the history of insurance back to the 50s, and he'd sold every line, and he knew everything about how an office worked. He owned an office. He used to, you know, he worked in every part of insurance. So I mean, I picked his brain. I mean, I'm kind of like AI before AI. I mine people's experience all the time. I used to read 30 books when I wanted to research something. And then I realized that there's no beating the actual human expert, because then you can block a scene out and say, okay, I want you to imagine being in this position. What happens now? What happens now? Like in Revised Fundamentals of Caregiving, when Peaches gives birth in Yellowstone, I've sat down with my friend Dave Coatsworth, who's delivered like 13 babies as an EMT, and I'm like, walk me through this. What happens now? Here's the scene. So like I approach that like I kind of know what I need the scene to accomplish, and then I have the expert to, and I did that with train engineers. I've done, when I write about a black character, I just like, let me know, have black friends read it and go, let me know, does this sound authentic to you? And I've never, if I get any blowback from them, then I correct it. You know what I mean? Because I know I can't hit a false note. So I think the people that get in trouble just aren't doing it very well.
Not surprisingly, that was a fantastic answer to my question. Thank you. You mentioned AI, and we probably don't want to go there because we would go down a real rabbit hole, but maybe just a super quick side note. Does it bother you? Are you concerned about it? I'll just tell you one thing that is kind of on my radar lately is I've noticed Facebook posts that are so obviously written by AI, that are so clearly not in the voice of the person who supposedly is writing it. And you might say, okay, no big deal. So what? But, it's sort of like Thoreau talking about living life deliberately, getting out of the city and the distractions and the filters to live life deliberately in as firsthand and as bare bones as you can. And in the 150 years since Thoreau, we've just created more and more and more filters and things that distance us from real experience. Everyone has thousands of fake friends on Facebook. Our cars drive themselves. We don't have to look at a map anymore because AI is telling us where to turn. And these things are great in a way, but it just seems like it's taking us farther and farther away, or further and further away from real, authentic experience. I'll get off my hobby horse now and just ask you, what do you think about AI? Do you think about it? Does it bother you?
I don't think about it too much. I think like anything else, like money, it can be a tool or it can be the root of all evil. I think AI is kind of smart in a way, like I just described. I kind of work like AI. Like I do sort of mine other experiences and and use them that way. I'm not. I don't feel threatened by it. Like I
Mhm.
just for fun, I did a chat GPT, write me a Jonathan Evison paragraph, and oh my God, it was so bad. It
Oh,
was,
was it? Okay.
hope nobody, it was like a 2000 word Hallmark card. And I hope that
Mhm.
nobody is reading I hope I don't sound like that. Um, I
No.
think the AI that really bothers me is stuff like, checkout stands, you know what I mean? Stuff that's taking jobs away from people. The AI that's really threatening to me is the AI that's already been here for a while. I don't think Chat GPT or whatever it's called is that good yet.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid for not being threatened by it. I just, I sort of willfully ignore that, which I don't want to embrace. You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't have cable. The only time I like binge watch TV shows, like most all my friends, is when I'm on tour, and like, I'll do it when I've got 5 hours in a hotel room. I'm not with my family. Like we got like DVDs and shit. I mean, we're like old school. So I don't. Yeah, I'm probably not even the person to ask. I'm not
Yeah.
on the cutting edge of technology. My 7-year-old has to help me with my phone most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm a Luddite.
I can't. I'm a retired university professor, and I can't even imagine what the future is going to be in terms of education with respect to AI. But again, let's not go down that rabbit hole. And I realize time is getting ahead of us here. And two things I definitely want to do. I want to ask you a little bit about Lawn Boy and the band, and I want to ask you if you don't mind to read something. Um, Lawn Boy, what was that experience like? When was it Leander, Texas, where they had
Yeah.
the hearings? Were you involved in any way whatsoever, or were you just watching that with amusement?
I wouldn't call it amusement. I just woke up and had a bunch of death threats one day, and I go, "Huh, what's that all about?"
Death
And
threats.
yeah, all from like Texas and Arkansas.
Oh
Uh,
my God.
um,
Pedophilia, they claimed. My
yeah,
God.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and
read
I
the
heard from a lot of pedophiles too, and I had to go silent on my socials for a while because pedophiles were looking at pictures and stuff like that and saying, "I know what you do." I was so
read the book, folks. Read the book.
yeah,
It's
or sit up and shut up, sit down, shut up. I don't, yeah. After that, all it did is honestly, sell books. I mean, I've been trying to rattle cages since I was a teenager in punk rock bands. So having a banned book is obviously like a badge of honor. But I mean, let's be honest, there's nothing in my book that you won't see in a Judd Apatow film or
right,
whatever. I
right.
think the whole thing is because my book got filed mistakenly in the wrong libraries and got conflated with Gary Larson's Lawn Boy, which is a middle grade book or whatever about a kid who mows lawns for money. And so, yeah, I mean, my book never did belong in, you know what I mean? My book's
Right.
fine for a high schooler though. There's nothing in my book that they don't already know. I mean,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Uh, Johnny, do you mind reading something for us?
yeah, I could do that. I don't know how long it is, so hold tight. Here we go.
Yep.
Uh, this is from Again and Again. Um, I always said I'd never write a sentient animal, but when I had the opportunity to write Oscar Wilde's cat, I just couldn't I couldn't resist. So this is from the point of view of Whiskers, who is Oscar Wilde's cat. Relative to some of my other embodiments, my life as a cat wasn't bad at all. At least not those years I spent with Oscar. It was much as you might imagine. I lounged, I stretched, I sunned myself upon the windowsill when there was any sun to be had in Chelsea. I was well fed and had the lavish attention of Oscar's affections at my disposal. Nothing small, neither winged nor legged, crawled, slinked, scurried, or buzzed about my proximity that I didn't have my way with it. And I most assuredly had my way. I had absolute dominion over the flat and over my Oscar. Beyond grooming myself and terrorizing insects and having my chin scratched, had I not possessed the knowledge of my former selves and future aspirations, my life might have been idyllic. The blessing and the curse of my 6 years with Oscar was that in this morbidly sensitive, oft misunderstood, fanciful young poet, I had at last relocated Gaia. It was her. It was actually my beloved Gaia repersonified. It was sure torture to resist Oscar's magnetism, but I had to, or my clinginess might have landed me on the street. I developed tools to distract myself, tick-like habits such as circling the room for hours on end before taking my rightful place in Oscar's lap, or sprawling upon his writing desk while he fussed over his poems. Only by willing myself not to suffocate him had I managed to become more cat-like and aloof, though believe me, such behavior ran contrary to my instinct to smother him with my attentions. Thus, I could not call Oscar a friend, strictly speaking, and certainly not a lover. To Oscar, I was a companion at best, and in some days merely an obligation. For it was Oscar who said famously that cats are only put on this earth to remind us that not everything has a purpose. If only he could have intimated that my impetus was singular, to possess him wholly and completely. To connect with another wholly and authentically is all I've ever wanted in any of my incarnations. Without the other, deprived of meaningful connection, we are ciphers at best and at worst invisible. To be seen, to be accepted, warts and all, that has been my greatest aspiration for over 1,200 years. To be adored for my flaws, to be loved unconditionally. And with Oscar, I had come close. Oh, Whiskers, he would say, scratching behind my ear in a moment of abstraction, fountain pen poised above the empty page, a dab of blue ink beating upon the tip. My precious, how simple your life must be, you rascal. How easy to manage your emotions, your expectations, to govern your desires and simply act on them without judgment or consequence. Of course, Oscar had no idea. He could not see that I was Uruk or that he was Gaia, but that was immaterial so far as my immediate objective was concerned. Despite our star-crossed paths, despite our star-crossed physical manifestations, setting aside those cursed feline limitations that would not allow me to sing my plaintive song in a tongue that Oscar might fully comprehend, I was still Oscar's muse, for a brief period anyway, I was the apple of Oscar's eyes. You must understand that I was selfish in love, that once I had captured Oscar's affection, I was constitutionally incapable of sharing it with another, for I was determined to be his one and only for all my days in Chelsea, and I was almost there. Oscar doted on me, confessed his innermost fears to me, scratched the underside of my chin, my belly, called me his precious. Sometimes when I sensed his tempers were agreeable, I dared to demand his attention, even preened if the mood was right, strutting across his ink-strewn pages until he gathered me up in his arms. Whiskers, my precious, he would say, guiding his delicate fingers down my spine. Does there exist a more magnificent creature than you? Oh, but don't think I don't see it. You are a vapid and vain little devil, who cares not a whit for anything beyond his own comfort and convenience. But you are magnificent, and that nobody can deny. Of course, Oscar had me all wrong. If I was vain, it was only to win his attention. If I seemed vapid, it was only his inability to grasp the depths of my emotions. My singular focus in life was Oscar and Oscar alone. But what did I care if he misunderstood me, so long as I was his precious? Many a night I slept curled beside his pillow, listening to him mutter and murmur in his sleep, hoping to hear my name. I was not by a stretch Oscar's only suitor. There were many, but I could contend with my human competitors, for Oscar was dishonest with them. He did not trust them the way he trusted me. How could he when the little harlots were loyal to no one? Only with me was Oscar ever truly honest, truly vulnerable. Thus I tolerated my human rivals, even employed my cloying charms on them if I thought it would get me a spot on the bed between them. It was a good life until everything fell apart. He was a plug ugly Tom, big and ungainly, a homely shade of gray, speckled black with dead green eyes and a long regal striped tail, which comprised his only real attribute. And boy, did he flaunt it, whipping that thing around like a boa, hoisting it magnanimously in his wake, curling it elegantly upon the windowsill, furling and unfurling it as the sun hit his ugly face just so, even sweeping the useless appendage gently across Oscar's face. Imagine! So average, so utterly unextraordinary was he, a useless lump where pest control was concerned. I once watched a roach scurry right over his useless tail, and the scoundrel did not so much as budge from his place on the settee. The Tom was torpid in his daily routine, careless in his hygiene, altogether unworthy of affection, let alone affections so delicate and sublime as Oscar's. But the greatest insult of all was the name that Oscar bestowed upon this interloper. Precious, he called him. Precious, my pet name, my rightful and preferred name, as I never favored the moniker Whiskers, which was so novel, so frivolous. Precious, the name Oscar summoned upon those wistful occasions when he found himself stymied by his literary endeavors. The name he lavished upon me as I lay beside him in bed, purring to my heart's content. Precious, wecious widow wover, he would say to the big clod, who would invariably advance with his graceless plod and make a show of that useless tail of his, swishing and wagging it in Oscar's face, sounding that ugly guttural purr, blunt and indelicate as a locomotive. I was incorrigible to the Tom when I acknowledged him at all. I hissed at his nearness and brandished my claws should he dare cross my path. Oscar took his side more often than not. Whiskers, you incorrigible puss, make nice this instant. But of course I dared to ignore these decrees, for never would I confer anything but contempt upon my rival. By all rights, the Tom might have bullied me, the big lout, but he didn't. He might have begrudged me my dwindling share of Oscar's affections, but he didn't. He might have lorded his supremacy over me at every juncture, but instead, he was a portrait of aloofness. He was no more threatened or intrigued by me than by the moth that wavered with impudence in front of his face. And for this, I hated him even more. That Oscar would ever take in that graceless simpleton, that lumbering clodpole, that he should endeavor to name the beast precious. Well, suffice it to say that I had never lived to know such betrayal. And yet, I was powerless. I had no choice but to forgive Oscar. Worse, I loved him more with every perceived slight, every failure to notice me. So helplessly compelled was I to be his or anyone else's one true light. Okay. I don't know.
Wow, man, thank you so much for doing that. That's fantastic. That had to be a lot of fun to write.
It was, and that's why I wrote it, because I swore I'd never write a sentient animal. Like kind of easy, but so fun because cats.
Yeah, do you know the band South San Gabriel?
I do not.
An offshoot of Centromatic, if you know them.
I've heard the name.
Will Johnson. He's got an album called the Carlton Chronicles that is all from the point of view of a cat, and it's great. Johnny, I think we need to leave it right there. That was fantastic. I really appreciate you doing it. I appreciate you taking the time to connect. I'm looking forward to the Heart of Winter, and thank you again so much for doing this. And I wish you all the best, man.
Thanks for having me, John. Appreciate it, bud.
All right, take care.
Have a good one.
You too.